Hi, welcome to the third installment of the HOPESD info series. This part of the info series was first presented during the info session on July 7th, but I'm very excited to talk to you all over YouTube today. For those of you who don't know me already, my name is Nicole Lilly. I'm the Housing Projects Director here at Our Time to Act United, and this is the HOPESD info series, or Housing Options Prevent Exclusion for San Diego. Today, we're going to be covering how it's made, land use scenarios, and more specifically, community planning groups. So first, let's define some things so that we can give our conversation some context today. So first off, what are community planning groups? Well, according to San Diego City, community planning groups are groups that provide citizens with an opportunity for involvement in advising the city council, planning commission, and other decision makers on development projects, general or community plan amendments, rezonings, and public facilities. And the recommendations of the planning groups are integral components of the planning process and are highly regarded by the city council and by staff. So this definition provided by san diego.gov basically is saying that community planning groups are giving the opportunity for non-elected citizens to play a role and participate in the decision-making process on development and on land use and specifically housing. So what do community planning groups do? Well, they help provide input on and debate around and kind of facilitate the conversation around creating land use scenarios that are then refined, and community planning groups play a process in refining that land use scenario to create potential community plans that are then altered, debated, and eventually adopted by city council as the community plan for that area. So community plans provide more detailed guidance for how individual community planning areas will be planned over the next 30 years. So that 30-year number is important to remember. So this includes policies on land use, mobility, urban design, public facilities and services, natural resources, historic and cultural resources, and economic development. Community plan updates in coordination with the general plan and its land use element will help achieve both citywide and community level goals. So again, that definition is by san diego.gov. And it's present on the website. So let's go ahead and jump in. There are 52 community planning areas in San Diego. So we're going to be looking at how long it's been since those community planning groups in San Diego have completed a total update to their community plan, and also when they've last amended these plans. So for context, the numbers in blue are going to be communities that are currently in the process of updating their plan. Numbers in red are representing communities who've gone beyond 30 years without updating their plan and don't have a plan update in progress. Yellow is going to be for plans that need updates within 10 years. So that's following that 30-year timeline given by the city's definition. And green is going to be for plans that were completed within the last 20 years. So at the end, there will also be a breakdown of how many groups fall into each of these categories, but let's go ahead and get started. The planning groups are in alphabetical order. So up first, we have Barrio Logan. Barrio Logan is currently has a plan update in progress, but as you can see, keeping that 30-year number in mind, Barrio Logan is about 15 years over schedule for this process. So next, Black Mountain Ranch is at 25 years since their last update. And considering the length of some of the community update processes that it's taken, Black Mountain Ranch should consider beginning their update process very soon. Carmel Mountain Ranch has gone 39 years without a new plan, but they do seem to be at least monitoring their current community plan as they last amended their plan as recently as 2021, but still they don't have a plan currently in process. So it's going to likely take a little while for them to have a updated plan that they need. Carmel Valley has gone 48 years without an update and has not amended their plan in quite a while either. So to give even more context to just how long 48 years is, In 1975, the year Carmel Valley's current plan was adopted, the Vietnam War was just ending. So the world, our environment, and certainly the population has changed greatly since then, and our community plans should reflect that and change and evolve with us. So City Heights has also gone 25 years without a plan update, and should probably consider beginning that process soon as well. Claremont Mesa has gone 34 years, but they're also currently in the midst of their plan update process. Similarly, in College area, those whose current plan was also adopted back in 1989, so 34 years ago, is also working on their plan update right now. And they are on track to finish around the fall of 2024. Del Mar Mesa is the first plan that we're looking at that was updated in the 2000s, so 23 years ago. And they haven't amended it at all since, so they might be doing that soon. Downtown is obviously a very robust and high density area, and so it was just updated 17 years ago and even just amended back in 2020. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, we have East Elliott. So East Elliott Community Planning Area, current community plan was created back in 1971, or 52 years ago. To put this in context, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act was passed back in 1974. So when East Elliott passed their current plan for housing and land use, Richard Nixon was the president of the United States, and women largely weren't allowed to apply for credit cards without their husband's permission. So clearly, a lot has changed since 1971, and our community plans should too. So Eastern area was updated 25 years ago, so they might also be considering beginning their update process soon. And Encanto neighborhoods were updated much, much more recently, only 8 years ago in 2015. Fairbanks Ranch Country Club was 41 years ago, and they've not amended their community plan at all since 1982. So not only are they 11 years post that 30-year timeline of needing a new community plan update, they have not amended their current community plan since their current plan was adopted. So they have a very out-of-date community plan. Greater Golden Hill, very different from Fairbanks Ranch Country Club, their current plan was adopted back in 2016. They also haven't had an amendment, but also their community plan was only adopted 7 years ago. So not as necessary, but they should definitely be monitoring. Kearney Mesa the current plan was adopted very, very recently, just in 2020. So very new. Kensington Tullomage their current plan was adopted in 1998, so 25 years ago. Again, 25 years ago, they should begin their plan update process very soon, and the last amendment was in 2015. La Jolla was last updated in 2003, so 20 years ago. So they'll be looking at a plan update in about 10 years. Linda Vista was their plan was adopted in 1998, so 25 years ago. So again, should probably consider a plan update soon, but it seems that they've also been monitoring their plan quite closely, and their last amendment was in 2019. Midway Pacific Highways Planning Area last adopted their plan update in 2018, and they haven't amended since, but only been 5 years since their current plan was adopted. Miramar Ranch North was last adopted in 1980 and last amended in 2016. But again, 43 years. So they are post that 30-year window and should probably be updating very soon. Mira Mesa did update very recently, and their current plan was adopted in 2022. I do believe that this is the most recent community plan of all 52. So Mission Beach was updated 49 years ago. So their current plan was adopted in 1974. and last amended in 2017. Mission Valley their plan was adopted in 2019, so only 4 years ago. And Navajo's community plan was adopted in 1982 and last amended in 2015. But again, 11 years post that 30-year window and should definitely be updated soon. Normal Heights current plan was adopted in 1998, 25 years ago, and last amended in 2015. They should definitely be considering starting that plan update process soon to stay within that 30-year timeline. North City Future Urbanizing Area current plan was adopted in 1992, so 31 years ago. Just broke the 30 years. North Park was current plan was adopted in 2016 and already had an amendment in 2020, so they seem to be monitoring their plan quite well. Ocean Beach current plan was adopted in 2015, so only 8 years ago. Old Town San Diego adopted their plan in 2018, so only 5 years ago. And Otay Mesa current plan was adopted in 2014 and last amended in 2017. So only 9 years for Otay Mesa's current plan. A lot of green on this slide, which is encouraging. Continuing on, Otay Mesa Nestor current plan was adopted in 1997, so 26 years ago. So they need a community plan update process quite soon. Pacific Beach also needs a plan update quite soon, and their current plan was adopted 28 years ago in 1995. Pacific Highlands Ranch current plan was adopted in 1998, and their last amendment was in 2004. And again, 25 years, so they're within that window of needing a plan update process soon. Peninsula's plan area was adopted in 1987, 36 years ago. Rancho Bernardo was in 1978, so 45 years ago, so about 15 years behind schedule on updating their plan. But they have had an amendment in 2016. Rancho Encantada was, their current plan was adopted in 2001, so 22 years ago, and they haven't had an amendment since, but they are within that 10-year window of reaching the 30-year timeline. Rancho Penasquitos current plan was adopted in 1993, and their last amendment was in 2021. So they have amended it quite recently, but they are at that 30-year timeline. So a plan update process should be in their future. Sawberry Springs it was 41 years ago. Their current plan was adopted in 1982, and their last amendment was in 1998. So they should certainly consider a plan update, if not an amendment, very soon. San Pasqual Valley's current plan was updated in 1995, and their last amendment was in 2005. And San Ysidro was only 7 years ago in 2016, and they already amended their plan in 2017. Scripps Miramar Ranch current plan was adopted back in 1978, so 45 years ago, so they also need a plan update quite soon. And Serra Mesa was adopted in 1977, so 46 years ago. Almost done here. Skyline Paradise Hills current plan was updated in 1987, 36 years ago. Southeastern San Diego, only 8 years ago in 2015. Terra Santa in 1982, so 41 years ago, so they are 11 years overdue. Tijuana River Valley is 17 years overdue, and their current plan was adopted in 1976, and the last amendment was in 1999. So definitely need at least an amendment and certainly a new plan very soon. Torrey Highlands current plan was adopted in 1996, 27 years ago, and their last amendment was quite recently in 2019. And Torrey Hills current plan was adopted 26 years ago in 1997. Torrey Pines, 28 years ago, 1995. So the university community plan update is currently in progress, but they last adopted their plan in 1986, 37 years ago. This process has taken about 5 years. So I think their current plan was about 32 years old when it began. But yeah, so they're currently in that process, and I believe are set to finish hopefully by the end of this year. But we'll look at their timeline in a little bit. Uptown's community plan update is also currently in progress. Their current plan was adopted in 2016. So you might be asking, why are they updating their plan? And that's a totally valid question, but this is the Hillcrest specific update. So not the entire community plan is being looked at, but they are updating specifically the Hillcrest area of Uptown. So yeah. And finally, we have Villa de la Valle, and their current plan was adopted back in 1984, so 39 years ago. And their last amendment was back in 1996. So they certainly need a new plan soon, and they need to monitor that plan to make sure it's best serving their community. So let's look at some statistics. Now that we've gone through all 52, let's break it down. Of the 52 community planning areas, 22 of them, or 42.3% of them, are overdue for update. 16, or 30.8% of them, will need to be updated within 10 years or less, according to that 30-year timeline set by the city. And considering the time these updates can take, it's likely that many of these will fall into the previous category before they're updated if the process continues the way it has thus far. Only 14 of 52, or 26.9% of the community plans in San Diego City, have been updated in the last 20 years. Considering the previous two statistics, this number should be much higher. Another number that should be much higher is the 9.6%, or only 5 community plans that are currently being updated. So why are they not? Why are they not much higher? Why has it gotten this bad? Well, the addition of community input has significantly lengthened the process, and the domination of group in these community planning groups of exclusionary and anti-housing residents blocks updates and amendments from occurring, or if they do get through happening, they do not happen in a timely manner. So many of these anti-housing residents try to argue that their community doesn't need new housing or is receiving too much of the supply in comparison to other areas. First of all, the decades that have passed and the rapid growth our city has experienced, as well as the extreme housing crisis that we face, is proof enough to prove that we need more housing. But to address the second argument that high resource areas like University City, for example, are receiving too much of the housing supply, not all community planning areas are the same. For example, the population of the Claremont Mesa planning area as of 2020 was 79,805. While this is one of the largest plan areas in the city, there's also the population of the North City Future Urbanizing Planning Area, which in that same year was only 963. So obviously these populations are vastly different, and different communities have different needs, and as they change and grow, they need a regularly updated and monitored plan that will actually serve their entire population for the long run. So what is a community plan trying to achieve? Well, a community plan is trying to implement on the community level the 10th element of the general plan. So that's the land use and community planning element. This is implemented through the 52 community plans, and community-specific policies and land use designation maps are then created within these community planning groups. So what informs land use designation? Well, first, economic analysis, climate action plan and transit access, vehicle miles traveled, housing needs is a big one, community input, so that definitely comes in large part from the community planning groups, and equity and city goals. So how does land use designation happen? So how do you implement all of these things that inform land use designation? Well, you can implement this through zoning designation maps, development regulations, development incentives, and ongoing monitoring and refinements. So these community plans are implemented, and they do not require development. They set the terms for development. So within land use designation, you can do the zoning designations. So that's throughout the maps, but you also need to set what the rules for development are through development regulations, and you need to encourage the development that you're setting through development incentives. And that ongoing monitoring and refinement looks like amendments that are offered through these community plans. So as we went through all of the different community plans, that last amended section is that monitoring. So yeah. What does the plan update timeline look like? Well, first they launch the plan update. So they have to decide to start the plan update. Then in the second step, it's the development of the plan components. So what is this plan going to include? So they begin working on that. Third, they have scenario development and community engagement. So that's when these land use scenarios are created. That's when they look at the land designation. That's when all of those considerations of land designation are included. And then the community is engaged in providing input on that. So that's where you can get some of these exclusionary behaviors, which if you also look at other videos in our YouTube channel, you can see some of that exclusionary behavior on display, especially towards youth and renters in the university community plan update process. But that community engagement on the land use scenarios is included here in that third step. Then a draft plan is formed and there's analysis given. This is traffic analysis, environmental impact reports, things like that. And this also receives community engagement and input. Then you have the final plan draft, you get more public hearings, and then it goes through the planning commission as well as the city council, and then it's decided on whether or not that plan will be adopted. So what does this timeline look like for plans that are currently happening? Well, this first one here is the University City Community Plan Update. They're trying to finish by late 2023, so that's this year. This here is the college area community plan update. They started in 2020 and they're hoping to finish by fall of 2024. And this one here is for the Hillcrest specific plan update. So not that entire plan being updated from Uptown, but Hillcrest specifically this is the timeline that they've set. Also began in 2020 and is set to finish in 2024. So, whoa, that was a lot of information. Naturally, you might have some questions. That is totally fair. This is not the info session, so I can't have anyone raise their hands and unmute, but we want you to stay connected with us. So if you have questions, please reach out to me. Please reach out to me at my email, so nicole.lilly@autounited.org, or you can also reach out to us on social media. Most of our social media handles are at AutoUnited, but you can also check out our website, autounited.org. Again, I'm Nicole Lilly. I'm the Housing Projects Director, and I want you to ask any questions that you have. So I hope you enjoyed the HOPESD info series number 3, how it's made land use scenarios specific to community planning groups. I know it's a lot of information, but thank you for being here and thank you for being willing to learn more about housing justice and how housing options can prevent exclusion for our entire San Diego community. So thanks for having hope for SD, and I will see you next week.